Hello everybody, welcome to this video on decision trees. So in this video we'll be talking about how to use decision trees to evaluate offshoring versus onshoring options. This is another example of decision trees, and decision trees can be used in many contexts, and this is one of them. So the example that we'll take is from the textbook. Let's talk about D-Solar. So D-Solar is a company with a demand in Europe for 100,000 panels per year currently, and each panel sells for about 70 euros. Now the annual demand may increase by 20% with a probability of 80%, or decrease 20% with a probability of 20%, right? So this year demand is 100, so next year it can become 120 or it can become 80. So it become 120 with the probability of 80%, and it'll become 80,000 with the probability of 20%. So it can decrease by 20% or increase by 20%, with probabilities being 80% for increase and 20% for decrease. Now, let's begin with a simple example. So let's say that you want to build a plant in Europe or China with a rated capacity of 120,000 panels. So the plant will have exactly a capacity of exactly 120,000. What would you do if you're just planning with just demand in mind? So we are assuming that everything works in euros and whatnot. And let's look at some more data. So the fixed cost if you build a European plant, the fixed cost in euros is $1 million per euro, and the variable cost is $40 per panel. If you build a Chinese plant, it's $8 million per year, and 8 million yuan per year and 340 yuan per panel. That's the variable cost. Now, the exchange rate, of course, will also change, and that's the next thing that we're going to talk about. So the European plant, so let's assume that this European plant, forget about the fact that we wanted to build a plant with exactly 120 as the capacity. We are saying that the European plant can have, we are saying that the European plant can have greater volume flexibility and can increase or decrease its production between 60 and 150,000 panels. So if demand is less than 60,000, you still have to make 60,000 panels. But if demand is more than 150,000, you cannot make more than 150,000 panels. And Chinese plant has lower volume flexibility, and it can produce between 100,000 and 130,000 panels. So if demand is less than 100,000, then it has to make at least 100,000. You have to buy at least 100,000. Make at least 100,000 in the Chinese plant. And if demand is more than 130,000 panels, you cannot make them. Right now, currently the exchange rate is 9 yuan per euro, and this is expected to rise. That is, yuan is expected to become weaker by 10% with a probability of 70%, or a drop, that is, yuan will become stronger 10% with a probability of 30%. Right. Now we are looking at the sourcing decision over the next 3 years. That is period 0, period 1, and period 2 again. And we want to use a discount rate of 10%, and we want to see how this works out. Which decision should we make? Should we open the European plant, or should we open the Chinese plant? And here is the decision tree. So as usual, remember that right now you're beginning with a demand of 100,000 and the euro being the exchange rate being 9 yuan per euro. So again, these are two sources of uncertainty, and both sources of uncertainty have are binomial uncertainty. That is, you have only two options. In this case, increase and decrease. So if you remember the problem that I did during the for the synchronous session, the problem in the synchronous session, that was a case where binomial uncertainty, but the binomial uncertainty was demand can either go up or stay the same. So there are just two options, and the same two options repeat. That's the idea behind binomial uncertainty. So you begin with 100,000 units of demand, and the exchange rate being 9 yuan per euro, and then you have 4 options from here. So demand goes up and exchange rate goes up. Demand goes up, exchange rate goes down. Demand goes down, exchange rate goes up, and demand goes down and exchange rate also goes down. Now, exchange rate going up means that you will get more bang for your buck. Basically, every euro you'll get 9.9 yuan, as opposed to exchange rate going down means that the yuan becomes more expensive. So that's why this might seem like, okay, 30% and 70% here, but shouldn't 30% be for increase? Here it says probability of rise is 70% and probability of drop is 30%. When you say rise, it means that the exchange rate becomes stronger. And when you say fall, when you say drop, you're saying that the exchange rate becomes weaker for yuan. That's the context in which you're looking at that. So just be careful. No, I promise that in when I give you a homework problem or on the exam, it won't be so ambiguous, but just keep that in mind. And similarly, there are 4 options here, and you'll have 9 options here, just like every other case of binomial uncertainty. So demand can again go up, and exchange rate further goes up. Demand goes up, and exchange rate goes down. Demand goes up, but exchange right, and demand goes up and exchange rate goes down again. So demand exchange rate goes down from here, right? From here, demand goes up but exchange rate goes down, and demand goes up and exchange rate stays the same. So these are the 9 options that we will encounter, and we'll take it from there, right? So let's calculate these probabilities. So we'll set this up in Excel and solve this in Excel. It's much easier, as you've seen with both the examples that I've did. It's much easier to just copy the formulas down and whatnot. So let's begin here. So demand, exchange rate. Let's begin with the first option of building a European plant. I mean, technically speaking, when you're building a plant in Europe, you don't have to worry about exchange rates because you're building everything in euros and you're calculating everything in euros. So I guess we don't have to use exchange rates here. But when we build a plant in China, we're going to have to use exchange rates. So you know what? Let's see if we set it up without exchange rates, or with the single possibility of just demand going up or down. Let's see what everything looks like. So we need to know what demand is. Then we have the fixed cost and variable cost, right? The fixed and variable cost. But before we do that, we have to keep track of no. I think we are fine. We have to calculate the fixed cost, the variable cost, revenue, and profit, and finally the net present value of profit. Okay, so we start with period 0. So in period 0, that's currently demand is 100,000, right? Like I said, we're not looking at exchange rates or anything, so we are good. Fixed cost is 1 million. Let me get that out of the way. Let me just look it up, right? Fixed cost is 1 million and variable cost is 40 euros per panel. So going back to the Excel sheet, 1 million and variable cost is 40 euros per panel, and revenue, right? So fixed cost is that, variable cost is 40 euros per panel times the number of panels, which is demand, right? So you pay 40 euros per panel times the number of panels that you're going to sell, which is demand. And revenue is you're selling everything for 70 euros. So 70 euros times 100,000. And profit is let me calculate total cost here. I mean, I guess we didn't have to do that, but hey, why not? Right. So net present value of profit, we will calculate that later. Let's get period 1. Right. So in period 1, demand can either go up or go down. So in this case, we are not looking at exchange rates. So there are only 2 options. Demand can increase by 20%, or demand can go down by 20%. Those are the only 2 options here. So demand can either go up or down. The fixed cost is the same, and the variable cost again. So because we are saying that the production can be demand can be anywhere between 60,000 and 150,000, and we can match production exactly to demand. So it doesn't. So we don't have to worry about being less or more than the upper or lower limits. So I'm going to take the fixed cost, all of these formulas. I'm just going to copy them and paste them here. Fixed cost is 1 million. Variable cost is 40 times that. And then this is the revenue, this is the profit. And the same goes here, fixed cost, and so on, right? Now again, I'm not calculating net present values yet. Let's go to period 2. Okay, period 2 again. So now demand can go up or down again. So there are 4 possibilities here. So there'll be 1.2 times this number. So demand can go up, or demand can just or demand can go down from here. I'm sorry, there'll be only 3 possibilities, not 4 possibilities. There'll be only 3 possibilities. Demand can go up from that, or demand can go down. So demand going down will be 96,000. Now demand going up from here will give us the same number. So if you do this times 1.2, it gives you the same number. So let's not repeat that. So demand going down. So demand can further go down from 80%, and that'll make it 64%. So these are the 3 possibilities for demand in period 2. And so, okay. So again, the fixed cost, the variable cost, again, the maximum is 140, the minimum is 60. So we can take care of demand. There's no problem there. The fixed cost, variable cost, profit. Let me, right? So profit values, they all work well. So let's calculate the net present values. And this is a much simpler calculation, because we don't have to worry about exchange rates. But once you have to worry about exchange rates and variability in exchange rates, the large decision tree comes up, and that makes it more complicated, as we will see in the next when we calculate the NPV for the Chinese plant. Okay, so first let's calculate the net present value here. The net present value here is that there is a 80% chance that demand will go up. So it's 80% times this value. So let's begin here. So the current profit plus, we're going to calculate future profits here. We're going to calculate the future profits and divide that by 1.1. Don't forget that you have to include the current profit and divide the future profits by 10%. In case for 10%, it was mentioned in the problem. So this is 80% times the probability of demand going up times the scenario, the profit when demand goes up, plus 20% chance that demand will go down. So this is the scenario when demand goes down, right? That's the net present value here. And here the net present value is there is, again, so I'm going to divide this by 1.1. There is a 80% chance that demand goes up from here, and a 20% chance that demand goes down. That's the net present value there. So all of this is dollars. I don't want the decimals. Oops. Except here, I guess. Okay. Right, now net present value of profit here. So this will be the current profit plus divided by 1.1 again. Future profits, again, there's a 80% chance of demand going up and a 20% chance of demand going down. And there you go. 6 million, actually, I guess I should make all of these euros and not dollars, just to be consistent. There you go. Okay, so that is the first part of the first calculation. Let me just save this. Desolar. Okay, now let's do the second part of the calculation. Okay, so let's proceed. So let's look at the case where you're building a plant in China. Now here we have to keep track of both demand and exchange rates because both can be variable. So we need these, but we also need a few extra columns, right? So we first need a column where we keep track of exchange rates. Further, we also need to have a column where all the costs are and the revenues, you cannot calculate them off of demand because, as you notice, demand can be can be as low as 64,000 in period 2 and as high as 144,000 in period 2. And we know that with the Chinese plant, the volume flexibility is lower and it is between 100,000 and 130,000. So we need to figure out, so I'm going to add another column. Here we're going to say the number of panels that are actually manufactured. Say, for example, if demand turns out to be 96,000, right? You still have to make 100,000 panels. So you still have to pay for the fixed cost. You have to pay for the variable cost and all of that. But you won't be able to sell all 100,000 panels. You can only sell 96,000 panels. So I'm going to create another column here. The first column that I'm going to create, I'm going to call it panels manufactured. Right? And then panels sold. Now they can be the same if it's between 100 and 130, otherwise they will be different. And then the fixed cost, variable cost, revenue, all of this. So revenue will be calculated from the number of panels sold. The variable cost will be calculated from the panels that are manufactured. And so that's something we have to keep track of. All right. So let's begin. So we begin with period 0. So in period 0, demand is, we begin with 100,000. And exchange rate is 9 yuan per euro. I'm gonna do that. Right. So number of panels manufactured. So how do you calculate how many panels are actually manufactured? So you say that so there are two things to keep track of. If demand is less than 100,000, you have to make at least 100,000, right? But if demand is more than 130,000, then you cannot make more than 130,000. So we are going to write two if functions, one inside the other. So these are called nested if functions. and this is how I am going to do it. There are multiple ways of doing it based upon the logic that you can think of, but this is how I am going to do it. I'm going to say that if this demand is less than 100,000, if demand is less than 100,000, that's the logical test. If this is true, if demand is less than 100,000, you have to manufacture at least 100,000 panels, right? You have to manufacture at least 100,000. If not, if demand is not less than 100,000, which means that now we are in a situation where demand is in fact more than 100,000. Now, in this situation, you have to make the other check to see if demand is less than 130,000 or more than 130,000. So we say that if, so we're going to write another if function, if, so we are in a case where demand is, so we only come to this case if demand is more than 100,000. So we say if demand now is more than 130,000, because we use less, let's use less again. Less than 130,000. Demand is less than 130,000. Then whatever the demand you have, that will be your demand. So let's say demand is 120,000. If demand is 120,000, then the first check is failed, right? 120,000 is not less than 100,000. So this is false. So what is the value if it is false? So if the value if it's false is, you have to do another check. So that if demand is less than 130,000, which is again the case, then whatever your demand will be the number of panels that are manufactured. And if not, the number of panels that you manufacture is 130,000. You cannot make more than 130,000. If demand is less than 100,000, you make 100,000. If demand is more than 130, you make 130. But in between, you make as many as are demanded. Right? Now, in the previous case, we didn't have to worry about that in the European plant because demand was the range was between 60 and 150, and all demand values were between 60 and 150. So we didn't have to worry about keeping track of how many are made, how many are sold, and all of that. But here we have to, because the volume flexibility is much tighter. Okay, so that's the number of panels manufactured. So let's look at the number of panels that are sold. Now, again, what are the possibilities? If demand is more than 130,000, if demand, let's begin at the lower end. If demand is less than 100,000, you will make 100,000 panels, but you will only sell, say, let's say demand is 64,000. One of the options here is that demand will become 64,000. So if demand is 64,000, you'll still make 100,000 panels, pay for the fixed and the variable cost, but the revenue will be based only on selling 64,000. So if demand is less than 100,000, if demand is less than 100,000, that's the first check. If demand is less than 100,000, then the number of panels sold are the same as demand, whatever your demand is, right? So you have to make more panels, but you can only sell so many. Otherwise, if that's not the case, we have to write another if function. So if demand is less than 130,000, right? So if demand is less than 130,000, then, so if this is the case where demand is more than 100,000, but is less than 130,000, in which case you will still make the same number, because if demand is less than 120,000, you can sell 120,000 panels. That's not a problem. So I guess that makes it easier. If not, you can only sell, even if demand is let's say 144,000, you can only sell the number of panels that you manufacture, or in this case 130,000. That's the maximum that you can sell. Now, you'll notice that if demand is less than 100,000, it's A3. If demand is less than 130,000, it's still A3. So as long as demand is less than 130,000, it's A3. We don't need the first check here. So if demand is less than 100,000, even though you're making 100,000 panels, you'll only sell what demand is. If demand is less than 130, you will make and sell the same number of panels. If demand is more than 130, you can only sell 130,000 because that's all you can make. So I'm going to simplify this because both of these conditions end up with the same value. I'm just going to write the second if function. I'm not going to write the first if function. So if demand is less than 130,000, then you're going to sell as many panels as are demanded. But if demand is more than 130,000, you can only sell 130,000 panels because that's the maximum you can manufacture. And there you go. Okay, that's the logic. So just like this case, we wrote two if functions, but then realized that the first two parts of the if function have the same result. Unlike here, you have different results for each part of the if function. But here you have the same result for the first two parts of the if function. So you can collapse them together and write a single if function. Okay, so fixed cost. Fixed cost is the same. 1 million. Oh, this is different, right? Fixed cost is different. So let's look it up. Fixed cost for the Chinese plant is 8 million yuan per year, and the variable cost is 340. So what I'll do is I'll calculate everything in yuan at the end, and then just multiply that with the exchange rate at the end. So let's calculate everything in yuan. So 8 million, 8 million, that's a fixed cost. The variable cost is 340 per panel. That's 340 times the number of panels that are manufactured, not the number that are sold. So the total cost is the sum. Okay. The revenue. Now this is based on the number of panels that are sold. So you take the number of panels sold, multiply that with the sales price. So the sales price is still in euros. So I guess we have to do some calculation here. Let's do that. Right. So the revenue is in euros, but the cost is in yuan. So when I calculate this total cost, I'm going to change that. So I'm going to take the total cost. So 1 euro is worth 9 yuan. So I'm going to divide that by the exchange rate. So I can convert everything into euros. So this cost, the fixed cost plus variable cost divided by the current exchange rate. Now the exchange rate is going to be different in each of these different scenarios. You're going to divide by the different exchange rates. So that's the cost in euros. So the profit will be the difference between revenue and cost. And there you go. So the net present value, we will calculate that in a second. So we're going to have to, all of this is counting, but not straight up accounting. All of this will be in euros. This is also in euros. These two will be in yuan. No decimal place. Okay, no decimal places here to make my life easier. But all of this will, of course, have decimal places. Okay, so essentially at the end we are going to calculate everything in euros. So we are going to calculate the fixed and the variable cost in yuan, but when calculate the total cost, we're going to divide that by the exchange rate to convert everything into euros. Right? Now let's do period 1. So period 1. So this is where you have to keep track of the different values of demand and exchange rate. So this will be 1.2 times the demand. So it can go up 20% or it can go down 20%. So as usual, I'm going to write the go up parts first and then go down. This will again, let's do go up. It can go up by 10%. Or go down by 10%. Same, go up by 10%. Or go down by 10%. Okay. Now these formulas are are not going to change. It's just the demand and exchange rates that are going to change. So let's see how that works out. So panels manufactured, sold. So the panels manufactured, it's the same formula. It is based upon demand value. So I'm going to copy all of these formulas over. Just going to copy them and paste them. They should all work fine, because first, if demand is 120, you will make 120 panels and you will sell 120 panels. So this part is right. Now the fixed cost is 8 million yuan. That doesn't change. The variable cost is 340 times the number of panels that are manufactured. And the total cost is the sum of these two divided by the current exchange rate. The exchange rates are going to be different for each of these calculations. The revenue is based upon selling everything for 70 euros. So you're just going to multiply this with 70, and the difference between revenue and total cost is the profit, right? So these formulas are not going to change. Let's make sure that they work, right? Now, if demand is 80,000 panels, right, you will still have to manufacture 100,000 panels, but you can only sell 80,000 panels, which means the revenue will be based off of the 80,000 panels, and the variable cost will be based off of 100,000 panels. So that's all baked in. Again, when we calculate the total cost, we divide that by the current exchange rate and whatnot. And so these are our total cost values. You'll notice that when demand is low and exchange rate is stronger, that is, yuan is stronger compared to the euro, the profit that you make falls down dramatically compared to when demand is high and the yuan and the exchange rate is favorable to the euro. Okay, so let's go down to period 2. So this is where the 9 options will come in. So again, I'm going to do it the way that I like it. I'm going to put everything in the order of demand first and then the exchange rates, right? So demand can go up to 144,000. Go up to 144,000. Right? Or it can go down to 96,000 from 120,000. Or it can go up to 96,000 from 80,000. So it can be either 144,000, 96,000, or the other option is 64,000. So it can go down. Again, you don't have to write these formulas. Once you calculate this, you can just type them in. That's fine too. Now, let's look at the exchange rates. Again, the exchange rates can go up or down by 10% from the current numbers. So let's say if it goes up, so $10.89, or it can go down from here. Now, if it goes up from 8.1, it'll end up at 8.9. It can also go down from 9. Let's just calculate times. Sorry, this will be 1.1 times that. Just calculate 0.9, 1.1 times that will also give us 8.91, and then 0.9 times that. So again, just repeat the 3 numbers. Keep doing this. Right. Once we have these, we can copy the formulas out for this. Just paste them here. It should always work. So if demand is 144,000, you can only make 130,000 panels and you can sell them all, but you can only do that up to 130. If demand is 64,000, you'll notice again, it's 96 or 64. You still have to make 100,000 panels, but you can only sell what is demanded, right? So you'll notice that you can end up with losses in some of these cases. Okay, now let's calculate the net present values of profit. Now, one of the things that we didn't carefully track, unlike the previous cases, are the probabilities. But we know the probability. So if you look at the decision tree, you'll know that demand going up and exchange rate going up has a probability of 0.8 times 0.3, that is 0.24. Demand going up but exchange rate going down has a probability of 0.8 times 0.7, that's 56%. Demand going down and probability going up, exchange rate going up has a 6% chance. Demand going down and exchange rate going down has a probability of 14%. So that is 24%, 56%, 6%, and 14%. So those are the probabilities, and the same probabilities get repeated for the different scenarios, right? So let's do that. Let's keep that in mind. So when calculating the net present value here, so we're going to say that there is a probability, which maybe I'll just write these numbers out. So it's a 0.8 times 0.3, right? So there is a 80% chance that demand will go up times 30% chance that exchange rate weakens. This option times, that's the probability, that's 24%, 0.8 times 0.3, times that scenario. So there's a 80% chance that 80% chance that demand will go up, and a 30% chance that yuan will weaken, or the exchange rate also goes up. So demand goes up, exchange rate goes up, that's 24% chance times the the profit in that scenario. So that's what we will have. But remember that when writing the net present value, make smaller, so that's obviously not the formula there. Okay. So that is how we're going to do that. So that's 24% probability there. So we're going to begin. Get rid of that. So when writing net present value, you take the current profit plus you discount future profits by 1.1, and within this parenthesis we're going to write all the probabilities and everything. So here I'm going to say 0.8 times 0.3 times this number plus 80% chance that demand will go up times 70% chance that yuan will strengthen times this possibility plus 20% chance that demand will weaken and demand will go down, and a 30% chance that yuan will weaken times this possibility, right? Demand goes up, demand goes down, but yuan also weakens, plus there's a 20% chance that demand will go down times there is a 70% chance that yuan will strengthen times that probability, that payout. So you take the corresponding payouts of the probability. So I wrote the first one down explicitly so you understand these numbers. So I hope you can look at this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of all of this and replace that with 0.8 times 0.3 is 0.24, because it just makes it easier. 0.8 times 0.7, that is 0.56. 0.2 times 0.3, that is 0.06. And 0.2 times 0.7 is 0.14. Right? 24 plus 56, that makes it 70 and 80. And then 6 plus 14 makes it 20, 80 plus 20 is 100. So all the numbers add up to 100%. And they have to. Alright. So this is the net present value of this scenario. So the current profit from this scenario plus the future profit from the future scenario. And there you go. So let's replicate that formula. So that number plus, again, going to divide this by 1.1. this is going to be 24% times this scenario, 56% times this scenario, plus 6% times this scenario, plus 14% times this scenario. Again, I hope you understand why I'm choosing these numbers, because you start with 120 and 8.1 in period 1. What are the places you can end up in period 2? Demand goes up, exchange rate weakens, or exchange rate also goes up. Demand goes up, but exchange rate goes down, but exchange rate strengthens. Then demand goes down, exchange rate goes up, then demand goes down, and exchange rate also goes down. So these are the two scenarios. So that's how we calculate those numbers. So here I'm gonna speed through just a little bit. Video is getting slightly longer than I expected. But all of these calculations, as you remember, it's similar to what we did before. The only difference here being that the points of uncertainty are different. That's the only thing to keep in mind. Plus 0.56 times this scenario, plus 0.06 times this scenario, plus 0.14 times this scenario. Finally, this is the worst case scenario where the exchange rate strengthens but the demand goes down, and you still have to manufacture 100,000 panels. So it'll be 24% times this, right? Demand goes up and exchange rate also goes up. Yeah, that's this. No, that's this. Yep, plus 0.56 times the scenario, plus 0.06 times this scenario, plus 0.14 times this scenario. And there you go. So those are the net present values of profit for period 1. And let's calculate the net present value of profit for period 0. So it'll be current profit plus divided by 1.1. So here again 24% times the first scenario, plus 56% times the second scenario, plus 6% times the third scenario, plus 14% times the fourth scenario. The same 4 power probabilities. There you go. So that's the net present value of profit of doing everything, of building the Chinese plant, 6,247,000 euros, and the net present value of building a European plant is 6,538,000 euros. So it's slightly higher. It's much cheaper to build everything in China. I mean, the variable cost and the fixed cost values are definitely much cheaper, but the exchange rates make it slightly more volatile, and the fact that the volume flexibility is lower, that's the one that really hits you. Now, if you are able to have similar volume flexibility in the Chinese plant as a European plant, you will find that the Chinese plant has a much lower NPV. So that's the trade-off that we are making here. Okay. All right. So this is an example of how you can use decision trees when you have demand and exchange rates uncertainties. So okay. I hope you have I hope you understood everything in this video. But if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. All right. Take care.